I think we have a problem where our ruling elite, whether it's the PH, the BN, the PN or PAS, don't have the ideas. I mean, that's the fact of it. How do you go beyond this period? How do you get out of this situation where after 60 years of independence, we're still having wages that are 1/6, 1/8 of the wages in the West. So Anwar says he wants to help everyone, especially the poor, the marginalized, wants to make no one is left behind. Maybe he believes that. But the macro policies that our government is following and has been following is actually undermining those kinds of aspirations.
Hi, Kumar, what is your impressions on the budget 2025?
Okay, actually, I think many of us in PSM are disappointed with the new minimum wage. We only got 1,007. We're hoping for more than that. We're asking for 2,000. And the pension scheme that we've been pushing for the last 1.5 years, there wasn't even a mention of it, So that's the disappointing thing. And the health allocations is only about 45 billion. It's about 2.5% of GDP. We've been asking for that to be pushed up towards 4%. So it's not gone up as much as we wanted. But on the other hand, to be fair to the Prime Minister, Finance Minister, it is a responsible budget because it takes into account the issue of our deficit, the issue of government debt now reaching about 60% of GDP, is more than 1.2 trillion, and they're looking for ways to cut down the deficit and looking at how to cut down the subsidies. It was like subsidies were like 90 billion in 2022, and then they've cut it down to 78 billion in 23, and they're going to cut down further this year. So all these things shows fiscal responsibility, and we got to appreciate that. And there are some other good things in the budget. One is idea of taxing dividends. First time, it's very low tax. It's only 2% of dividends in excess of 100,000 a year. That's a new tax for Malaysia. It's a good idea. It will only affect those who have investments of more than 2 million in the stocks. Assuming a 5% rate of return, $2 million in the stocks will give you about 100,000. It's only in excess of that kind of income. So it's low, but it's a good start. And the one thing the Prime Minister said is that they won't bring on GST now. When the wages are so low, they won't bring on GST. That is good. At least he's aware that the GST is a regressive tax. It will affect the poor people more than the rich. But there have been several economists who say that we need the GST. It got us about 43 billion in 2017, and they're hoping it will bring in a similar amount or more. But it's good that our Prime Minister said that it's not the right time because our wages are low. It's a regressive tax, so we don't bring it in at this time. So it's a good thing. And he talked about bringing in a carbon tax, not this year, but next year. Carbon tax on iron and steel production, on electricity generation. Didn't give you the terms of it, how much and all that, but at least the idea has been brought up. It's going to widen our tax base. Those are good ideas. And when he was talking about targeting subsidies and assistance, I was very happy that he made the distinction between the top 15%, the T15, and the bottom 85%. The cuts in the subsidy will only affect the top 15%. There will be people earning more than $20,000 a month, around that range and above. And to me, that's quite fair. It doesn't burden the middle class either. The M40 are also going to continue getting subsidies as the B40. Only those who are earning about $20,000 a month and more are going to get removal of subsidies. They got to pay for petrol or whatever at the market rate, which I think is a fair way to approach it. So these are the things that I think which were good about the budget.
So are you saying that this is a good budget for the B40 and M40?
Okay. Not actually. See, the thing is, the aspirations are very good. What the Prime Minister said, want to help the poor, want to shield the poor and the middle class from the effects, that's good. But the problem with our economy is that our macroeconomic policies have got many features that actually make poverty eradication more difficult. For example, we are reliant on attracting investment, both domestic and foreign. And the way we do it is we keep our cost of production low, because we want to entice them to come here instead of going to Thailand, instead of going to Vietnam. So that actually makes it difficult for us to raise wages. If we raise wages, cost of production will go up, and we are scared we will lose investment. We are scared of raising corporate taxes, because we raise corporate taxes and Thailand's tax is lower than ours, Vietnam is lower than ours. We are scared that not only will the FDI go there, but our domestic investors may also go there. So if we don't address those issues, the kind of macroeconomic structure we have, where we are reliant on private investors, we're reliant on FDI, we have a free trade kind of environment where an investor, say a shoe producer in Malaysia, can go and set up a factory in Thailand, produce shoes, and bring it in here without any tariffs, without any import taxes. That makes it more dangerous for us to ask him to increase his wages, because he'll say, look, if you increase my wages, I'm going to go to Thailand. And we are stuck by the free trade agreement within ASEAN that our tariffs cannot go up. So now tariffs for shoes, for example, for clothes, for bags, is 0%. We can't raise it. So these are the structural problems in our economy that actually make it difficult for us to raise wages, difficult for us to have a carbon tax, for example, difficult for us to raise corporate tax. And these issues were not actually addressed in the budget. How do you overcome these things? Because this is what keeps our people with low wages. And I was disappointed that these kinds of issues were not addressed, were not identified even. So that was disappointing.
So are you saying Anwar is hypocrite because he's saying one thing and doing another?
Okay, I'm not sure about that. You see, I think the problem is Anwar and many people in government, this government, previous government, they believe in what the World Bank and IMF have told them, that the best economy you can have is the economy which is led by privately owned capital, that you must have production, sell to the markets in the West, to Europe, to America, export-led growth. They believe in free trade, in the free movement of capital. And they believe in this thing that if you make businessmen happy, they'll come and invest in your country will grow, and everyone will be happy. So that's the kind of paradigm that these guys believe in. And actually what has happened in Malaysia is, to some extent it has worked. I mean, our GDP has increased 25-fold in the last 50 years. But the flip side of that is, our wages haven't gone up as much. I mean, it only went up about 2 times. So on one side, you have wealth expanding 25 times, but wages of ordinary people, income ordinary people, only going up 2-fold. So these are the issues that the government isn't aware of, and I think it's more a ideological thing, they're not really aware. So Anwar says he wants to help everyone, especially the poor, the marginalized, wants to make no one is left behind. Maybe he believes that. But the macro policies that our government is following and has been following is actually undermining those kinds of aspirations.
So increasing the minimum wage to 1,700, will it cause the inflation and the investor will run away or not?
Okay, we don't think so, I mean, if it's 1,007, even up to 2,000, it will not cause investors to run away, Of course, we double it from 1,005 to 3,000, that will make an impact. When we first brought in the minimum wage at $900 a month, there was a lot of talk saying that, it's going to cause problems with investment, going away and all that. But we've had from 900 a month, it's gone up in stages. And at each stage, the economy has grown all the while. There's been no problem. So I don't think at this kind of increase of about 20%, 30% or what it is not going to cause that kind of massive negative impact. And if you look at it also, FDI has been coming in, because FDI doesn't only look at wages, they also look at other things like infrastructure, whether you have other supporting industries, whether your power supply is adequate or not. So all these things are also there. So I don't think it'll make an impact. And in terms of inflation, Well, there might be, if like say eating places and all that, you may have to pay a little bit more. But you also got to remember that when people get more wages, they'll be spending more in the local economy. So the SMEs, the small businesses, the pasar malam people, the people in the estate, in the markets and all that, will get more business. So actually, it's got this. They call it a multiplier effect. They buy more, then the businesses have more business, and they also buy more from the suppliers. More people get wages, more people get overtime. It's good for the economy. You may have a slight inflation, but it overall maybe it'll be worth it.
So what do you think government should do?
Okay, I think government should first look and see what should be the objectives of our economy. The first thing is an economy should make sure it can produce the goods and services for the people. At the same time, it must produce enough goods and services to export, so we get foreign currency to buy the goods and services that we cannot produce locally, maybe high-tech, machinery, or certain kinds of medicines that we can't produce locally, we have to buy it, so we must have the foreign exchange. The third thing the economy has got to do is to make sure that people have the income to be able to buy all these things that they need. We can produce everything. You have the capacity to produce everything, but if say 30% of the population don't have the income to buy it, then the economy is a failure. So we are in that situation. A significant number of people don't have enough income because we are a low-wage economy. We are not getting good enough wages. Our wages are only like 1/6, 1/7 of similar work being done in Europe or in America. So it's not enough for them to buy what they need to buy. And you have a lot of, especially our young people, who despite having diplomas and having degrees, cannot find jobs that are commensurate with their level of training. And they're forced to work in simpler jobs at lower pay, or they're forced to work in gig economies. They got to work in the informal sector. So there is a major problem of underemployment that our country is facing. So to handle all of this, the government has got to think of certain things. For example, the government has got to say, how do I increase jobs? For example, in our country, there's a great need in the care sector. Healthcare sector needs more nurses, more doctors. It needs maybe a category of nurses to go to the community and visit people in their home, people with stroke or people who are unable to move, go and do physio at home. And all that needs money. We need more investment in things like renewable energy. We need to put rooftop solar panels. We need to do more of reusing of waste, circulation and reusing of waste. We need to rehabilitate our forests. All these are not profitable kind of endeavors, It's got to be done by government. So the government has got to say, look, I got to do these things. How can I get more revenue? So I don't have to borrow money, but I can have revenue to do these things. And this is where we got to talk about how can we increase corporate taxes? Not immediately, maybe not by ourselves, but we got to talk to Vietnam, we got to talk to Thailand and say, look, if we all reduce corporate taxes, we are all having trouble. We can't meet the needs of our people in healthcare or in social protection. We can't mitigate climate change. We can't do adaptation for climate change. We need more funds. So why not we stop this race to the bottom? So that kind of idea has got to come. That we say that we talk to our ASEAN neighbors and make sure that this race to the bottom is stopped. But the problem is this kind of idea is not seen at all in the budget. We don't see this. It's been identified as a problem and something needs to be done. I mean, I know it can't be done straight away, but it's got to be started, you see. The other thing we've got to look at is now we have this whole thing that free trade is like the most important priority. Well, I think trade is important, but in a situation like in Malaysia, when you allow Vietnam and Thailand to just dump extra vegetables they produce on the Malaysian market, it affects our farmers in Malaysia. It actually undermines them, and some of them just give up and don't become farmers. So when you destroy our capacity to produce our own food, I think free trade is not more important than that, is it? food production, food sufficiency, food security is more important than the principles of free trade. So I think there should be some measures within ASEAN to say, look, hey guys, we agreed to free trade, but I think where it comes to food production, we must give us some leeway to put some tariffs, that you cannot swamp our market with cheap food products to the extent that our farmers go bankrupt. I mean, it's good to have trade. I mean, if our farmers are unreasonable and charge too much, then we can allow some import of cheaper vegetables to bring it down, but not to the extent that it destroys that whole industry. So I think these are things that we need to look at, this whole thing of movement of capital, this whole thing of relying on investors from overseas, and all these issues need to be re-evaluated. The other thing is, for the longest time, we are relying on the export market to grow. It's called export-led growth. But how long can that work? Because if you look at Europe and America, their economic growth is really very slow. It's in a bad situation because their biggest manufacturers have all packed up and gone to China or other third world countries, Mexico, other third world countries. So the American middle class, the European middle class, the well-paid working class there have largely been laid off and be forced to go into other kinds. So their economic growth is actually faltering. And we want to produce cheaply and try and sell there and make money. I don't think it can go on for very much longer. We've got to say, look, hey guys, ASEAN has got a population of 650 million. If ASEAN is more prosperous, if our wages here are better, if people here earn better, we have a big domestic market. And our industries can produce for our domestic market. So, of course, there'll be a bit of inflation. If you pay people more, then the cost of people working in restaurants will go up, the cost of your cooks will go up, and you're going to pay more for your food. But overall, you'll be better off. So I think these are the kinds of things that we have got. The world is changing, We cannot be a low-cost producer relying on the export market for the next 10, 15, 20, 30 years. We've got to start talking about how do we develop ASEAN as a zone of prosperity, which can generate more investment opportunities, more jobs. So these are things that our budget planners, our economists have got to start talking, because it can't be done overnight. We can't decide 30 years from now, let's start doing it. We've got to build it from now. And the other important thing is, with AI, with the increase in technology, now 10 people can produce what 50, 60 people were required to produce 30 years ago. And this process is going to get better and better. We're going to produce more and more with less and less manpower. Then it comes back to the third thing I said about the economy. The economy must make sure that everyone has got a job so they can then buy things in the market. So how do you do that when you have increasing productivity? Well, you got to talk in terms of reducing the number of hours worked per week. Instead of working 45 hours a week, we work maybe 30 hours in a series of steps. Bring down the working hours to maybe 30 hours a week. And you pass laws to make overtime. You can make a worker work more than 30 hours a week, but you got to pay overtime. With overtime rate should be higher, much higher. So discourage people from keeping one worker and working him 48 hours instead of spreading the work among more workers. Because the principle should be everyone who wants to work, who can work, should be given a decent job. But that can only be done in a regional way, because if we are giving a 30-hour week and paying more per hour, then our cost of production is going to go up. And definitely our shoes, our clothes, our shirts, our bags, whatever we produce will be higher. And if Thailand doesn't do that, Thailand keeps following the 48 hours a week kind of work, it will undermine our market. So it cannot be done just in Malaysia. But these are things we got to start talking, because technology is going to keep on interesting, robotics, AI. And our obligation is to make sure everyone has got a job, so that everyone has got income to buy what his family, her family needs on the market. So these are the issues that we have to start addressing. But sadly, none of these kind of larger long-term issues are even insinuated in the budget. We're not talking about it. We're still talking the old paradigm, efficiency and we're trying to grow and we grab the export market, we are more efficient than Thailand and we export more. Cannot. We've got to look at shared prosperity and how we can grow the domestic market, how the wealth we are creating is better shared, how the benefits of AI and better technology is shared with the producers, with the workers, and not only grabbed all by the owners of capital. I mean, these are issues that we need to look at, and the budget is not looking at those things. So in that way, it's disappointing, is it? Because it's not addressing those kinds of very important long-term issues.
Then what Rakyat can do?
Well, I think we have a problem where our ruling elite, whether it's the PH, the BN, the PN or PAS, don't have the ideas. I mean, that's the fact of it. They don't have the ideas. I mean, how do you go beyond this period? How do you get out of this situation where after 60 years of independence, we're still having wages that are 1/6, 1/8 of the wages in the West. We have wage suppression. We have suppression of the commodity prices in our country. We're not sure how to deal with the fact that the economy is growing, but we're not able to get a larger share of that growth to address, social protection of our workers and climate change issues. So we need to look at different paradigms, So if the government can't provide that leadership, a political leadership, the political elite that we have now, then the people have got to step forward. We've got to start discussing this outside of Parliament. We've got to start discussing it among ourselves and spread awareness that the system has generated a lot of capacity. The capacity of our economy is fantastic, and with AI and robotics is going to get even better. How can this be shared? How can this be made, more equitable? If we don't do it, then you're going to have a civil war situation like in the Americas. In America, what's happened now in the latest thing? I mean, a large number of the people are so unhappy with the status quo and the conventional parties, the center right, center left, they don't trust them. And they're prepared to just gamble on someone who says, I'll fix the swamp. And that kind of thing, we're not too far from that here, So if we don't manage the wealth that is generated to make sure that everyone gets a share. So I think NGOs, individuals, we've got to have discussions like this, How do we make sure that we make ASEAN a cooperative, prosperous endeavor so that our domestic market is enough to provide investment, demand, employment for us? Of course we trade, but you don't rely on the Western markets only for our growth. So I think these are kinds of things that we have to talk about on a larger scale. And we have the experience of the last 100 years to learn from as well, I mean, how do you manage productive capacity? How do you make sure that productive capacity goes for the benefit of the majority? How do you make sure government doesn't get too strong and authoritarian? How do you have checks and balances? There's a lot of issues we need to discuss, big issues. And unfortunately, our political class are not doing that. They're talking about the small issues. They're dividing us. They're playing race and religion. They're not going on the big issues. So maybe I think we should start talking about that, and maybe that will then spread through society. So this may be what we should start doing. I've shared with you what we are thinking about these kind of issues within the party. Let us know whether you agree, and let us know your feedback. Give us your views. Thank you.